Let me tell you something. There was a reason you crossed their path. A reason why your love, your kindness, your patience given to someone who only knew how to take, and take some more. You weren't just another chapter in their story. You were the warning before the storm. The last call before consequences came knocking. But they didn't listen. They didn't see it. They thought they could play the same old game. That you were just another pawn, just another fool. What they didn't know is that God was watching. And when he puts someone in your life as a final warning, ignoring it comes at a cost. Now listen closely. Because if you've ever loved someone who only knew how to break, manipulate, and deceive, if you ever gave your heart to someone who used it like a stepping stone, then these words are for you. There comes a time in every person's life when they are given a test, an opportunity to rise above their flaws, to break free from their destructive patterns, to embrace change and growth. You were that test for them. You were the living, breathing chance for them to see themselves clearly, to confront the demons they had ignored for so long, to finally turn away from the selfishness that consumed them. But they failed. Not because you didn't try, not because you didn't give them enough chances, but because their heart was never ready to change. They mistook your presence for a convenience, not realizing that you were there as a divine intervention. The way you loved them, the way you forgave, the way you stood by them even when they didn't deserve it, that was God's way of saying, this is your moment to be better. But they ignored it. They laughed at the opportunity, shrugged off the responsibility, and continued down the same road they had always walked. You weren't in their life by accident. You were sent as a mirror, reflecting back the truth of who they were, but instead of humbling themselves, they shattered that mirror. When someone is given a test, they can either pass by making the right choices or fail by repeating the same mistakes. They failed you because they refused to acknowledge the value of what they had been given. You weren't just another person in their life. You were a sign, a flashing warning light, a voice from above offering them grace when they didn't deserve it. They failed because they believed they had time to mistreat you and get away with it. Time to play their games and still keep you around. Time to take without consequence. But they were wrong. This wasn't just another relationship. This wasn't just another cycle of manipulation that they could control. No, this was their reckoning and they couldn't see it. That's what makes it so tragic. You weren't sent into their life for your destruction. You were sent for their salvation. And they rejected it. They scoffed at the kindness, mocked the sincerity, and mistook your patience for weakness. In doing so, they not only lost you, they lost the divine favor that came with you. A narcissist never sees the test for what it is. They believe they are in control, that they are always a step ahead, that they hold the power to twist and turn things in their favor. But what they don't realize is that God sees everything. He sees their lies, their deceit, their arrogance. And he places someone like you in their life, not to be used, not to be discarded, but to be the last warning before judgment arrives. This is why it hurts so much. This is why it felt so heavy. Because you weren't just dealing with a difficult person, you were dealing with someone who was being given their final chance to change. And they blew it. They saw your love as a game, your patience as an invitation to push further, your forgiveness as an excuse to keep doing wrong. They didn't realize that with every moment they chose to betray you, they were writing the story of their own downfall. And now as they sit in the consequences of their choices, they wonder why their world feels empty. But deep down, they know. Your presence in their life was not random. Every time they wronged you and you still chose to love, that was a test of their ability to change. Every time they pushed you away and you still came back with open arms, that was God saying, I am giving you one more chance to do right. But they never listened. They ignored the signs. They ignored the weight of their actions. They believed that they could keep playing the same game and that you would always be there. They mistook divine mercy for an endless loophole. But what they failed to realize is that mercy has a limit. Grace has a cutoff point. And the moment they crossed the final line, the moment they pushed too far, the door closed. Suddenly, the person who would have given them unconditional love was gone. The person who was willing to sacrifice, to uplift, to pour into them disappeared. Not because you stopped caring, but because God removed you. And when he removes someone, it is final. They may try to replace you, to find someone else who will tolerate their ways, but no one else will ever bring what you brought. No one else will ever love them the way you did because you were sent, not chosen by accident. And when God sends someone, it is never just for the sake of a relationship, it is for the sake of transformation. They failed because they thought they could reject what was sent and still receive the same blessings. But it doesn't work like that. They had a choice: rise to the occasion, become a better person, treat you with the respect and love you deserved, or continue down their selfish road. They chose the latter. And now they will feel the absence of what they ignored. That's the pain they never saw coming. Not just losing you, but losing the protection that came with you. Because while they thought they were breaking you, they were only breaking their own future. People often believe they can mistreat others and still walk away untouched, but they forget one thing: God is watching. He is keeping score. And he will never allow a good heart to be used without consequences. You were their test. You were their opportunity to break free from their toxicity, to step into something greater. But they weren't ready. And now they must live with the result of their failure. There will come a day when they realize what they lost. A day when they look back and understand that you weren't just someone who loved them, you were their last chance to be better. That day will come when they reach for the same manipulation, the same lies, the same tactics they used on you, but this time it won't work. Because the grace that covered them while you were there is now gone. The favor that shielded them is lifted, and suddenly everything they got away with before will start catching up to them. You don't have to seek revenge. You don't have to wonder if they will ever get what they deserve. That's already taken care of. Your only job is to move forward, to understand that their failure was never your responsibility. You did your part. You showed up. You gave your best. You poured your love into someone who was incapable of receiving it. That was your role. Their role was to recognize the gift they were given, and they didn't. That's why you have to let it go, because holding on to the pain, the anger, the betrayal, it's not your burden to carry. It belongs to them now. You passed your test. You remained true to who you were. They failed. And now life will teach them what they refused to learn from you. There's no going back, no fixing what was broken. Because what they broke was not just your trust, it was their own destiny. The moment they failed the test, they sealed their fate. And you are free. Free from their toxicity, free from their manipulation, free from the endless cycle of giving without receiving. You were sent to be a light in their darkness, but they chose to remain blind. And when someone rejects the light, they are left to wander in their own shadows. That is the reality they now face. That is the lesson they will learn the hard way. And you walk away knowing that you were never the one who lost. They were. Because God doesn't remove people to punish you. He removes them to protect you. And if he took you out of their life, it's because they had already failed. There are moments in life when God gives people a chance to turn things around. A moment of clarity, a moment of redemption, a moment when they are faced with a change with choice that could change everything. You were that moment for them. You were their chance to step out of their old ways, to break free from their toxic cycles, to finally stop running from the truth. But they didn't take it. They looked at you, saw the love, the patience, the loyalty, and instead of embracing it, they continued down their destructive path. They thought they had time. They thought they could keep treating people the same way, keep playing the same games, keep deceiving, manipulating, and taking advantage. But what they didn't realize was that you weren't just another person. You were the last opportunity before consequences came knocking. God placed you in their life to wake them up, to show them that they didn't have to be this way, that they didn't have to keep hurting people, that they didn't have to keep sabotaging the good things sent their way. But instead of changing, they rejected it. And now they must live with the weight of what they chose. Change is never easy, especially for those who have spent years running from it. They told themselves they were fine the way they were. They convinced themselves that their actions didn't have consequences, that they could hurt people and move on without a second thought. But then you came along and your presence disrupted their pattern. You didn't allow them to get away with their usual tricks. You called them out when they lied. You showed them love, even when they didn't deserve it. You offered them the chance to heal instead of hurt. That was God working through you. That was the moment where they could have turned their life around. But they didn't want to do the work. They wanted the rewards without the effort, the love without the responsibility, the blessings without the growth. And so they ignored the opportunity. They continued down the same road, mistaking your patience for weakness, mistaking your forgiveness for permission, mistaking your love for something they could throw away and replace. But there are some opportunities that don't come twice. Some doors once closed never open again. And the day they lost you was the day they lost their last chance to change. It's not that they didn't know better. It's not that they didn't see what was happening. They knew. Deep down, they knew. They felt it in the way you looked at them, in the way you loved them, in the way you never gave up on them even when they gave you every reason to walk away. They knew they were being given something rare, something most people never get, a love that was pure, a connection that was real, a presence in their life that was divinely placed. But instead of surrendering to it, instead of allowing themselves to be transformed, they fought against it. They convinced themselves that they didn't need to change, that they could keep going down the same road, keep using the same tactics, keep being the same person, and that somehow life would never catch up to them. But that's not how life works. That's not how God works. He gives opportunities, but he also closes doors. And when he sees that someone refuses to listen, refuses to grow, refuses to accept the grace they've been given, he lets them walk straight into the destruction they chose for themselves. You were never the problem. You were the solution they refused to embrace. You were the answer to their prayers, the blessing they didn't recognize, the opportunity they were too blind to see. And now, as they sit in the consequences of their actions, as they watch their life fall apart piece by piece, they will remember you. They will remember the way you loved them when no one else would. They will remember the way you stayed when everyone else left. They will remember the way you tried to save them from themselves. And that's when it will hit them. The realization that they had a chance, that they could have had it all, that they could have rewritten their story, but they chose not to. They chose destruction over redemption, pride over humility, deception over honesty. And now they will face what they spent their whole life running from: accountability. The moment you walked away, the moment God removed you from their life, was the moment they sealed their fate. Not because you wanted revenge, not because you wished harm upon them, but because they refused to accept the grace that was extended to them. There are some lessons in life that can only be learned the hard way. Some people refuse to change until the pain forces them to. And that is what they will face now. Not because you wanted it, but because it was the only way left. God tried to warn them through you. He tried to reach them through your kindness, through your patience, through your love. But when they ignored it, when they continued to choose their own destruction, he stepped back. And now they will feel what it's like to walk this road alone. They may try to replace you, to find another source of love, another person to fill the void, but it won't be the same. Because what they lost wasn't just a person, it was divine favor. What they lost wasn't just a relationship, it was protection. And once that covering is gone, everything they built on lies, on manipulation, on selfishness will begin to crumble. That's what happens when you reject what was sent to save you. That's what happens when you ignore the final warning before the storm. It's easy to look back and wonder if you could have done more. If you could have loved them harder, if you could have been more patient, if you could have held on just a little longer. But the truth is, it was never about you. This was their test, their opportunity, their moment to change. And they made their choice. You did your part. You showed up, you gave them everything, you poured into them even when it drained you. But at some point, a person has to take responsibility for their own healing. At some point, they have to decide that they want to be better, not just for you, but for themselves. They never made that decision. They never took that step. They never accepted the gift that was being handed to them. And now they will see what happens when you take grace for granted. Now they will feel the absence of what they once dismissed. Now they will come to understand that losing you wasn't just losing a person, it was losing the last chance they had to turn things around. They thought they could escape it. They thought they could keep running, keep using, keep hurting, and that somehow life would always give them another chance. But life doesn't work that way. God doesn't work that way. There comes a time when the door closes, when the opportunity disappears, when the thing they once took for granted is gone forever. That time has come. And now as they look around and realize that nothing feels the same, that the emptiness they feel can't be filled with distractions, they will remember. They will remember you. They will remember the love, the patience, the kindness they dismissed so easily. And for the first time, they will understand. They will understand that they had a chance to change and they wasted it. They will understand that the destruction they now face was never something you wanted for them. It was something they chose for themselves. They will understand that when God gives you a blessing and you reject it, you don't just lose the blessing. You lose everything that came with it. And that more than anything will be the lesson they never forget. Love is powerful. It has the ability to heal, to restore, to redeem. But only if it is received with humility. You gave them that love. You gave them something real, something pure, something they had never experienced before. You saw their brokenness and chose to love them anyway. You looked beyond their flaws, beyond their wounds, beyond the walls they built to protect themselves, and you still stayed. You gave them patience when they were difficult, understanding when they were cold, forgiveness when they were cruel. You were their safe place, the one person who truly saw them for who they were and still believed in them. That was God working through you. That was the bridge to redemption, the final opportunity for them to turn away from the life they had been living. But instead of walking across that bridge, instead of embracing the love that was sent to save them, they set fire to it. Not because they didn't see its value, not because they didn't know it was real, but because their pride was greater than their willingness to change. They didn't want to face themselves, so they destroyed the one thing that made them see the truth. Pride is a silent destroyer. It whispers in the ears of the broken, convincing them that they don't need to change, that they don't need to apologize, that they don't need to be held accountable. It tells them that admitting their flaws is weakness, that accepting love is surrender, that choosing growth means losing control. And they listened. They listened to the voice of pride instead of the voice of redemption. They chose to hold on to their ego instead of holding on to you. You tried to reach them. You tried to help them. You tried to show them that love was not their enemy, it was their salvation. But they resisted. They fought you at every turn. They pushed you away, dismissed your kindness, treated your love like it was something they could take or leave without consequence. They thought you would always be there. They thought you would keep holding on no matter how much they hurt you. They thought they could burn the bridge and somehow still find a way back when they were ready. But some bridges once burned are never rebuilt. Some opportunities once lost are gone forever. And the day they lost you, they lost their last chance at redemption. It wasn't that they didn't love you. It wasn't that they didn't see your worth. Deep down, they knew exactly what they had. They knew you were different. They knew you were a gift. They knew you were offering them something they would never find again. But pride is blinding. It makes people believe that they will always have time. It makes them think they can hurt someone and still be welcomed back with open arms. It makes them underestimate the power of divine intervention. Because this wasn't just about you, this was about something greater. This was about God giving them one last chance, one last opportunity to break free from the chains that had kept them bound for so long. And they rejected it. They chose their old ways, their old patterns, their old habits. They thought they could continue down the same path and somehow escape the consequences. But when you burn the last bridge to redemption, there is no way back. When you destroy the one thing that was sent to save you, you don't get another opportunity. And that is what they are coming to realize now, but it's too late. You were not placed in their life by accident. You were not just another person who happened to care for them. You were a divine intervention. You were the answer to their prayers, the proof that love still existed, the living example of what grace looks like. You were patient when they were impossible. You were kind when they were cruel. You were forgiving when they didn't deserve it. But love is not a doormat. Love is not something to be abused, taken for granted, or toyed with. Love is a privilege, a sacred connection, a bridge between what was and what could be. And they burned it. They destroyed it with their pride, with their arrogance, with their refusal to face themselves. They thought they were in control, but they weren't. They thought they could always find a way back, but they can't. And now, as they stand on the other side of the ashes, they are realizing that what they destroyed was the last good thing they had. They are realizing that they didn't just lose you, they lost their final chance to be saved from themselves. The hardest part of loving someone who refuses to change is knowing that you saw the best in them, but they couldn't see it for themselves. You believed in them when they had stopped believing in themselves. You held on to hope when they had already given up. You gave them a love that could have rebuilt them from the inside out, a love that could have rewritten their story. And they walked away from it. Not because they didn't want it, but because accepting it meant they had to confront the parts of themselves they had spent a lifetime avoiding. And that was too much for them. They would rather destroy something good than admit that they needed help. They would rather push away love than allow it to heal them. They would rather burn the bridge than walk across it, because walking across meant they had to leave their old ways behind. And they weren't ready for that. So they chose destruction over redemption. They chose their pride over the one person who truly cared. And now all they have left is regret. Regret is a heavy burden to carry. It sneaks up on you in the quiet moments, in the late night hours, when there is no one left to distract you from the truth. And that is what they are experiencing now. Because they see it clearly, they see what they had, they see what they lost. They see the bridge they burned and the emptiness that was left in its place. And no matter how much they try to convince themselves otherwise, they know they did this to themselves. They had a chance to be better. They had a chance to grow. They had a chance to embrace love instead of fear, connection instead of isolation, healing instead of destruction. And they turned away from it. And now the door is closed. Not because you wanted it to be, not because you were trying to punish them, but because there comes a point when enough is enough. There comes a moment when love, no matter how strong, can no longer hold on to someone who refuses to be held. And that moment has come. Life has a way of teaching people what they refused to learn when they had the chance. The lessons they avoided will come back around, but this time it won't be through love. It will be through loss. It will be through hardship. It will be through the realization that they let the best thing in their life slip away because they were too proud to admit they needed it. And that realization will haunt them. They will go through life searching for what they once had with you, trying to find someone else who will love them the way you did, trying to replace what they destroyed. But some things can't be replaced. Some people are one of a kind, and they will spend the rest of their life realizing that they had something rare, something divine, something irreplaceable, and they threw it away. They will remember the way you loved them, the way you fought for them, the way you tried to help them heal. And they will know without a doubt that they burned the last bridge they had to becoming the person they were always meant to be. Now they are left with the consequences. Now they must walk this path alone. And it will not be easy. Because once you have experienced real love, once you have been given a taste of something divine, nothing else satisfies. No distraction, no substitute, no temporary fix will ever fill the void, and that is what they must live with now. They will look back and see that they had a chance, one final chance to change. And they destroyed it with their own hands. They will feel the weight of their decisions, the emptiness of their pride, the loss of something they can never get back. And it will be a lesson they never forget. Because some mistakes can be undone, some wrongs can be made right, but when you burn the last bridge to redemption, there is no way back. And that, more than anything, will be the pain they carry for the rest of their life. When they walked away from you, they thought they were making a choice that benefited them. They thought they were winning. They thought leaving you behind meant they were stepping into something better, something greater, something more in line with their own desires. They didn't realize that they weren't walking toward a new beginning. They were walking straight into their own downfall. They believed they had control, that they were the ones calling the shots, that they could discard you and move on without consequence. But what they failed to see was that their actions were not just about you, they were about something much bigger. They were rejecting a blessing, dismissing a gift, turning away from the very thing that was meant to elevate them. And when you turn your back on something that was sent to help you grow, you don't move forward, you fall. They thought they were making the right move, but all they did was set themselves up for destruction. They walked away from the one person who truly cared, the one person who was patient, the one person who was willing to see past their flaws and still love them. And in doing so, they sealed their fate. At first, they may have felt a sense of relief. Maybe they convinced themselves that letting go of you meant they were free, that they had escaped something they didn't want to deal with. Perhaps they believed they could find someone else, someone easier, someone who wouldn't hold up a mirror to their soul the way you did. But life has a way of humbling people. It has a way of showing them that the choices they make have consequences. They thought they could replace you. They thought they could walk into something better. But what they found was emptiness. What they found was a world that didn't care about them the way you did. What they found was that every step they took away from you was a step deeper into their own misery. Because what they had with you wasn't something ordinary, it was something rare, something divine, something that doesn't come around twice. And they didn't just lose a person, they lost their protection, their stability, their sense of peace. They walked away, but they didn't walk into happiness. They walked straight into the consequences of their own arrogance. The world is not kind to people who reject their blessings. It does not reward those who throw away something good in favor of their own selfishness. At first, it may seem like everything is working out for them. They may even appear happy. They may post pictures, show off a new relationship, or act as if walking away from you was the best decision they ever made. But don't be fooled. What's happening on the surface is not what's happening in their soul. Because deep down, they are feeling the weight of what they lost. Deep down, they know they made a mistake. And the further they walk, the more they realize that their so-called freedom isn't freedom at all, it's a trap. It's a slow descent into loneliness, regret, and missed opportunities. The things they once took for granted, the love you gave so freely, the support you offered without conditions, the patience you showed even when they didn't deserve it, are now nowhere to be found. They walked away from the best thing that ever happened to them. And now they are starting to see that they didn't just leave you behind. They walked straight into a life they never truly wanted. People who make reckless decisions often believe they can outrun the consequences. They believe that as long as they keep moving, as long as they distract themselves, as long as they jump into the next thing, they can avoid feeling the loss. But reality doesn't work that way. Reality catches up. Reality reminds them of what they did. And that's exactly what is happening to them now. No matter how much they try to fill the void with temporary fixes, nothing satisfies. They can surround themselves with people, they can chase new relationships, they can try to pretend that they are better off without you. But the truth follows them everywhere. Because they didn't just walk away from a person, they walked away from their own growth. They walked away from an opportunity to change. They walked away from a version of themselves that could have been so much better. And now they are stuck. They are stuck in a cycle of repeating the same mistakes, attracting the same empty connections, facing the same frustrations over and over again. Because that's what happens when you reject a blessing. You end up chasing illusions, and every illusion eventually fades. They thought they were in control. They thought they could walk away without consequences. They thought they could treat you like you didn't matter and still find happiness elsewhere. But the moment they turned their back on you, the universe started teaching them a lesson. The same patience you gave them, they won't find anywhere else. The same love you poured into them, they won't receive from anyone else. Because what you gave was pure, was selfless, it was rare. And you can't walk away from something rare and expect to find it again. They may have thought they were leaving behind something small, something replaceable, but now they see the truth. Now they are beginning to realize that the love they rejected was the very thing that could have saved them. But it's too late. The door they walked out of is now closed, and no matter how much they regret it, no matter how much they wish they could turn back time, they have to live with the reality of their own choices. They didn't just walk away from you, they walked straight into a life they will one day wish they had never chosen. Pride is a dangerous thing. It convinces people that they are making the right decision when, in reality, they are setting themselves up for failure. And that's exactly what happened to them. They let their ego lead them instead of their heart. They let their fears dictate their actions instead of facing the truth. And now they are facing the consequences. Life will humble them. Life will show them that they were not as in control as they thought. Life will remind them again and again that walking away from something good doesn't bring freedom, it brings regret. And that regret will only grow stronger as time passes. Because with every failed relationship, with every disappointment, with every night they spend wondering why they still feel empty, they will remember. They will remember you. They will remember what they lost. They will remember that they had something real, something special, something divine, and they threw it away. They walked away thinking they were making the best choice for themselves, but what they didn't realize is that they were stepping into a life that will never feel whole again. The truth has a way of revealing itself, no matter how much people try to run from it. They thought they could escape accountability. They thought they could move forward without facing the reality of what they had done. But life doesn't let people walk away from lessons they were meant to learn. And that's why they are struggling now. That's why they are feeling empty. That's why nothing feels the same anymore. Because the moment they walked away from you, they walked away from something sacred. They walked away from a love that was meant to elevate them. They walked away from someone who was willing to stand by them despite their flaws. And in doing so, they walked straight into the kind of suffering that only comes when you reject what was meant to bless you. It may take time, it may take years, but eventually they will look back and see it clearly. They will see that their downfall wasn't caused by bad luck, wasn't caused by fate, wasn't caused by anything but their own choices. They had everything they needed to grow, to heal, to become better, and they walked away from it. Every step they take now is a step further into a life they never truly wanted. Because what they wanted wasn't to be alone. What they wanted wasn't to keep repeating the same mistakes. What they wanted wasn't to live with regret. But that's exactly what they got. And there's no one to blame but themselves. They thought they were walking away from you, but what they were really walking away from was the best version of themselves. They thought they were choosing freedom, but what they were really choosing was emptiness. They thought they could walk into something better. But what they didn't realize is that when you leave behind a blessing, you don't find another one waiting for you. You find a lesson. You find pain. You find the truth staring you in the face, reminding you that you had something beautiful and you threw it away. And now they have to live with that. They have to carry that weight. They have to wake up every day knowing that the path they are walking isn't leading them anywhere good. Because when they walked away, they didn't walk into a better future. They walked straight into their own downfall. People often think that when someone walks away from them, they are the ones who lost something. They feel abandoned, rejected, and left behind. But the truth is, you didn't lose them. They lost you. And not just you, they lost the favor, the protection, and the grace that came with you. They lost something they may never find again. Because when you are a person of light, a person of love, a person who carries divine favor, your presence is more than just companionship. It is a shield, a covering, a blessing. And when they walked away, they didn't just walk away from a relationship. They walked away from the divine favor that was attached to you. They didn't realize that being connected to you brought them protection, that your love was not just an ordinary love, but a love that carried grace. You were a safe place, a refuge, a source of peace in their life. And now that they are gone, they will start to see just how much of their stability, their peace, and their well-being came from simply being connected to you. They thought they could leave and still carry the same grace, but that's not how it works. Some people don't realize the value of a blessing until they no longer have it. They get so used to being covered, so used to being supported, so used to being loved unconditionally that they take it for granted. They assume that the favor will always be there, that the protection will always follow them, that they can walk away from you and still receive the same grace elsewhere. But favor is not a possession, it is a gift. And when you mistreat the vessel that carries that gift, you don't get to keep it. They thought they could replace you, thought they could move on without consequence. But what they failed to understand is that favor is not transferable. Protection is not guaranteed. When you walk away from the one who was divinely placed in your life, you walk away from everything that came with them. And that is exactly what they did. They believed they were making a choice that served them. But in reality, they were making a choice that stripped them of blessings they didn't even know they had. And now they are feeling the absence of the grace they once took for granted. At first, they may not have noticed. The first few days, the first few weeks, maybe even the first few months, they might have felt free, relieved, as if they had made the right decision. They might have convinced themselves that walking away from you was a step forward. But the absence of divine favor doesn't always show itself immediately. It reveals itself slowly, subtly, through the things they once had but no longer do. Through the protection that once covered them but is now gone. Through the doors that once opened easily but are now shut. Through the peace they once felt but can no longer find. Because what they lost wasn't just you, it was the unseen shield that came with you. The prayers you prayed for them that kept them safe. The wisdom you poured into them that kept them from making reckless choices. The patience you had with them that no one else will have. And as time goes on, they will begin to see that what they thought was an escape was actually a downfall. They didn't just walk away from you, they walked away from a covering they will struggle to ever find again. There are people in this world who are assigned to us, people who are placed in our lives not just for love or companionship, but for divine protection and guidance. You were one of those people for them. You were not just a lover, a friend, a partner, you were a shield. You were the one who stood in the gap for them, the one who lifted them up even when they didn't deserve it. And when they walked away from that covering. They lost the prayers you spoke over them. They lost the unconditional love that shielded them from destruction. They lost the grace that surrounded them simply because you were there. They thought they could walk into a new life and still carry the benefits of being connected to you, but favor does not follow those who take it for granted. Protection does not stay with those who reject it. And that is why things are beginning to fall apart for them. That is why their peace is gone. That is why they can't seem to find the same stability they once had. Because it wasn't just about you, it was about the divine presence that came with you. People don't always recognize when they are walking in favor. They assume their success, their opportunities, their protection come from their own efforts. They believe that things are working out for them because they are lucky, because they are smart, because they are capable. But sometimes the reason things go well in someone's life is because of who they are connected to, because of the prayers that cover them, because of the presence of someone who carries divine grace. And the moment they disconnect from that person, everything changes. They walked away thinking they could do better. They walked away thinking they didn't need you. But now they are realizing that things don't feel the same. The favor they once walked in has lifted. The protection they once had is gone. The grace that once covered them is no longer there. They lost more than just a relationship. They lost the unseen hand that was keeping them afloat. And no matter how much they try to fill the void with distractions, they cannot replace what they lost when they let you go. You didn't lose them. You didn't lose anything. They were the ones who lost. Because what they had in you was something rare, something powerful, something that most people spend a lifetime searching for. You were a gift to them, a source of love, wisdom, and patience. You gave them the kind of love that strengthens a person, the kind of loyalty that builds a foundation, the kind of protection that shields someone from their own destruction. And instead of cherishing it, they walked away. Instead of honoring it, they rejected it. And now they are feeling the consequences of that choice. Because life does not reward those who throw away their blessings. Life does not give second chances to those who refuse to see the value of what they had. And that is why their spirit feels heavy. That is why they feel lost. That is why nothing seems to work out the way it once did. Because they removed themselves from the very thing that was keeping them covered. They didn't just lose a person, they lost the divine favor that came with that person. And once that favor is gone, it doesn't come back. Some lessons in life are learned the hard way. Some people don't understand what they had until it is too late. And that is what is happening to them now. The further they get from you, the more they realize what they lost. The more they search for peace, for stability, for the same level of love and protection they once had, the more they come up empty, because favor cannot be replaced. Divine covering cannot be found in just anyone. You were placed in their life for a reason, and when they rejected you, they rejected that reason. And now they are facing the reality of their own choices. They thought they could walk away and still be covered, but life is teaching them otherwise. Life is showing them that the peace they once had wasn't theirs, it was borrowed from you. The protection they once walked in wasn't because of them, it was because of you. And now that they are on their own, they are seeing the truth. They lost something they will never get back. And no matter how much they try to move forward, the absence of that favor will follow them wherever they go. You were not the one who lost. You were not the one who was left behind. They were the ones who lost everything that mattered. Because while they were focused on what they thought they were gaining, they failed to see what they were truly losing. They thought they were choosing freedom, but they were actually choosing isolation. They thought they were walking into something better, but they were actually walking away from divine protection. And now, they are living with the weight of that decision. They are waking up every day feeling the absence of what they once had. They are searching for the same grace, the same favor, the same love, and finding nothing. Because when you walk away from a blessing, you don't get another one waiting for you. You get the lesson. And that lesson will follow them every single day. Because they didn't just lose a person, they lost everything that came with you. And now they have to live with that truth for the rest of their lives. There were nights when you cried yourself to sleep, wondering why this happened to you. Nights when the pain was too much to bear, when your heart felt like it was breaking into pieces so small that they could never be put back together. You felt alone in those moments, like no one saw your suffering, like no one understood the depth of your pain. You questioned everything. You asked yourself if you had done something wrong, if you could have loved them better, if you could have done more to make them stay, to make them change. The weight of that loss sat heavy on your soul, making you wonder if you would ever heal, if you would ever feel whole again. But through every tear, through every sleepless night, through every moment of doubt, God was there. He saw it all. He saw the nights when you curled up on the floor, unable to move because the pain was paralyzing. He saw the mornings when you forced yourself out of bed pretending to be okay when inside you were breaking. He saw the days when you questioned your worth, when you wondered if you would ever be enough. But even in those moments when you felt abandoned by the world, you were never abandoned by Him. God was there when your spirit was crushed, when your hope was fading, when you felt like giving up. He was there in the silence, in the moments when no one checked on you, when no one reached out, when you had to carry the weight of your emotions alone. He saw you standing in front of the mirror, trying to recognize yourself after they left. He heard the prayers you whispered at night, the ones where you asked Him to take the pain away, to make you forget, to make you whole again. And even though it felt like He was silent, He was working. He was healing you in ways you couldn't see. He was removing the parts of you that were attached to someone who was never meant to stay. He was shaping you, strengthening you, teaching you that you were never meant to depend on anyone but Him. He was showing you that their rejection was His protection, that their absence was necessary for your elevation. You question why he allowed you to go through this, why he didn't stop the pain before it began. You wonder why a loving God would let you fall for someone who was never meant to love you back. You wrestle with those thoughts, trying to make sense of why you had to endure so much heartbreak. But what you didn't see was what he was protecting you from. You didn't see the dangers he removed from your path, the destruction he prevented, the pain that could have been far worse if he had allowed them to stay. Sometimes God has to let us experience heartbreak to remove us from something that would have destroyed us. Sometimes the pain we feel is not a punishment, it's a rescue. He saw what you couldn't see. He saw the nights they talked about you behind your back, the times they pretended to love you while secretly planning their exit. He saw the manipulation, the lies, the betrayal, and because he loves you, he let them go. He let them walk away so that you wouldn't have to keep suffering in silence. You may have felt forsaken in those moments, but you were never forgotten. You may have felt like no one cared, like your prayers were unheard, but he was listening the whole time. Every tear you cried was counted. Every question you asked was acknowledged. Every moment of suffering you endured was not in vain. God never left you. He was there in the moments when you sat in your car, unable to move because the weight of the pain was suffocating. He was there when you tried to distract yourself, only to find that no distraction was strong enough to erase the pain. He was there when you replayed every conversation, every argument, every sign you missed, trying to understand why it all fell apart. And while you were trying to figure it out, he was already writing a better story for you. He was already preparing something greater. He was already setting up a blessing that would make you realize why that person had to leave. He was working behind the scenes, removing what was breaking you so that he could replace it with what would build you. The pain wasn't easy. The process wasn't quick. There were days when you thought you were finally healing, only to have memories flood back like a wave, knocking you down again. There were moments when you felt strong, only to be triggered by a song, a scent, a familiar place that brought it all rushing back. Healing felt like an uphill battle. And you wondered if you would ever truly be free from the grip of what they did to you. But through it all, God was carrying you. He was walking with you, step by step, reminding you that even though it hurt, you were never alone. He was placing people in your path who spoke life into you when you needed it most. He was sending you messages, small signs, little reminders that he had something greater planned. And even when you couldn't see it, even when you doubted that you would ever feel whole again, he never left you. He was patient with you. He let you cry, let you grieve, let you feel the depth of your emotions. Because he knew that true healing requires feeling. He knew that in order to make you whole, he had to let you break. And now, you are rising. Now you are starting to understand. Now you are beginning to see that what you thought was the end was actually the beginning. What you thought was abandonment was actually a redirection. What you thought was rejection was actually protection. You are stronger now, wiser, more discerning. You have learned to see people for who they truly are, not just who you want them to be. You have learned that love is not supposed to feel like suffering, that real love does not require you to beg to shrink, to lose yourself in the process. You have learned that the pain you endured was not a sign of your weakness, but a testament to your strength. You survived what was meant to break you. You walked through the fire and came out refined. And even though you didn't see it then, God was with you every step of the way. He was molding you, shaping you, preparing you for something greater. And now you are stepping into that greatness. Now you are walking in the favor that was always meant for you. Now you are starting to understand why he allowed it all to happen. Because if they had stayed, you would have settled. If they had stayed, you would have continued pouring into someone who was draining you. If they had stayed, you would have never realized your own worth. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hold us back the most. Sometimes the love we fight for is the very thing that is keeping us from the life God has planned for us. And even though it hurt to lose them, even though it felt like your world was falling apart, it was actually falling into place. God removed them because they were blocking the blessings he had for you. He removed them because he knew that they would never love you the way you deserved to be loved. He removed them because he had to show you that your worth was never dependent on someone else's ability to see it. And now you see it for yourself. Now you understand. Now you know that the nights you cried were not wasted. The days you questioned were not in vain. Because through it all, he was with you. He never left. He never abandoned you. And now you are walking into the life he always had planned for you. There was a moment when they had a choice. A moment when they could have done right by you, when they could have valued what they had, when they could have listened to the voice inside telling them to change. But instead they ignored it. They pushed it away like it didn't matter. They treated your kindness like it was a weakness, your patience like it was something they were entitled to, and your love like it was disposable. What they didn't realize was that you weren't just another person in their life. You were a divine opportunity, a warning wrapped in love, a lesson wrapped in grace. God placed you in their life to give them a chance to change, to wake up, to turn away from their selfishness, their manipulation, their destructive ways. But instead of seeing you as the blessing you were, they took advantage of you. Instead of recognizing you as someone God sent, they dismissed you as if you were replaceable. They ignored the signs. They ignored the moments when their conscience whispered, "You're going too far." They ignored the moments when they knew they were wrong but kept going anyway. You weren't just an accident in their life. You weren't some random person who crossed their path. God positioned you there as a last chance, as a final warning, as a light in their darkness. But instead of following that light, they chose to remain in the shadows. They mistook your forgiveness for weakness, thinking they could keep taking and never face consequences. They mistook your loyalty for foolishness, assuming you would always be there no matter how they treated you. They mistook your compassion for naivety, believing they could lie, manipulate, and deceive without ever being exposed. But God was watching. He saw everything. He saw the moments when they could have made it right but chose to make it worse. He saw the moments when they had an opportunity to humble themselves but let their pride win. He saw the times when they felt conviction but silenced it with excuses. And he knew that if they wouldn't change when he sent them love, they would have to learn through loss. If they wouldn't listen to his warning, they would have to face his justice. People think they can do whatever they want and get away with it. They believe that just because the consequences don't come right away, they never will. They think that because they lied and no one caught them, they've won. They think that because they betrayed you and walked away without suffering, they've escaped justice. But what they don't understand is that God's timing is not like ours. His justice is not always immediate, but it is always certain. The same grace that gave them a chance to change is the same grace that will now correct them. The same patience that allowed them time to do right is the same patience that has now run out. They mocked your pain. They laughed at your tears. They thought they were untouchable. But they forgot one thing: you weren't fighting them alone. You weren't standing in your own strength. You weren't just a person, you were a child of God. And when someone mistreats one of his, they are not just offending you, they are offending him. When they reject a warning from you, they are rejecting a warning from him. And when they ignore his warning, what comes next is his justice. Justice is not always loud. It doesn't always come in the form of immediate destruction. Sometimes it starts with an emptiness they can't explain, a loneliness that follows them no matter where they go, a string of relationships that never satisfy them, a cycle of chasing happiness but never finding it. They thought walking away from you meant freedom, but instead it meant bondage. They thought they were moving on to something better, but instead they walked into a season of loss. And the worst part, they won't even understand why. They won't realize at first that their downfall began the moment they mistreated you. They won't connect the dots between the moment they ignored God's warning and the chaos that followed. They'll blame bad luck. They'll say life is unfair. They'll look for someone else to blame. But deep down, there will be moments, quiet moments, when they remember, when they feel the weight of what they did, when they realize they had something rare, something pure, something divine, and they threw it away. That is justice in itself, because regret is a slow, painful teacher. Some people only learn when they lose. Some people only understand when it's too late. That's why God allowed them to walk away. That's why he didn't force them to change. He gave them free will and they used it to hurt you. He gave them a choice and they chose wrong. But what they didn't see is that every choice has a consequence. Every action plants a seed. And while they were busy planting seeds of betrayal, deception, and selfishness, they were also planting the consequences that would one day return to them. They will reap what they have sown, not because you wish it upon them, not because you seek revenge, but because God is just. What they did will not go unanswered. What they ignored will not go unnoticed. The very same energy they put into hurting you will return to them in ways they never expected. And when it does, they won't have you there to save them. They won't have your kindness to cover their mistakes. They won't have your prayers shielding them from the full weight of what they deserve. God sees the full picture. He sees what's ahead, what's coming, what's being prepared. He knew that if they had changed, they could have been saved from what's coming. But because they ignored the warning, they will experience the result of their own actions. God doesn't have to punish them. Their own choices will do that. He doesn't have to send destruction. They invited it themselves. They opened the door to their own suffering when they chose pride over humility, deceit over honesty, selfishness over love. And now the very things they used to hurt you will be the things that come back to them. The lies they told will be told about them. The love they took for granted will never return to them. The happiness they stole from you will be stolen from them in ways they never imagined. It's not revenge, it's simply the law of life. You cannot sow pain and expect peace. You cannot break someone's heart and expect your own to remain whole. They will feel the absence had, and by the time they realize it, it will be too late. But by then, you won't even care. By then, you will have moved on, healed, grown, stepped into the life God always intended for you. Won't be looking back, wondering if they've changed. You won't be hoping for closure. You won't be waiting for an apology that may never come. Because by then, you will understand that their downfall was never your responsibility. Their lessons were never yours to teach. Their consequences were never yours to carry. You were sent as a warning, not as their savior. And when they ignored that warning, God removed you so that they could experience what happens when His grace is no longer covering them. That is what true justice looks like, not always instant, not always dramatic, but always certain. It may take weeks, months, or even years, but when it comes, they will know. They will remember. They will feel the weight of what they ignored. And when they do, they will understand that losing you was not just losing a person, it was losing the last chance they had to make things right. Love is not foolishness. Love is not weakness. Love is the greatest strength a person can have because it takes courage to give your heart to someone. It takes faith to believe in them, to see the best in them, to hold on even when things are difficult. And you did that. You stood by them when others wouldn't. You forgave when most people would have walked away. You gave them more chances than they ever deserved. Not because you were blind, but because you had a heart that loved deeply. You were never the fool. You were the blessing. The one stayed when they pushed you away. The one who loved them through their brokenness. The one who saw their potential even when they couldn't see it themselves. But instead of valuing that love, they played with it. Instead of cherishing you, they tested how much they could take from you. Instead of growing with you, they chose to betray you. And that was never your mistake, that was theirs. Because what they threw away was rare. What they lost was priceless. And one day they will realize that. But by then, it will be far too late. Betrayal is not a reflection of the one who was betrayed. It is a reflection of the betrayer. It speaks to their character, their choices, their inability to value what was given to them. A person who betrays love does not do so because they were unloved. They do so because they do not know how to love in return. They saw your kindness and mistook it for weakness. They saw your patience and mistook it for desperation. They thought they could do what they wanted and you would always be there. But love does not mean tolerating disrespect. Love does not mean accepting lies. Love does not mean letting someone destroy you while you continue to give them more chances. You love them, but that love was not meant to keep you in pain. You were meant to be cherished, honored, and respected. And the moment they chose betrayal, they proved that they were never worthy of you in the first place. They didn't break you, they revealed who they truly were. They didn't play you for a fool, they played themselves. And their own choices will be their greatest regret. People who betray love always believe they are getting away with something. They think they've won. They think they have outsmarted you, that they have taken advantage and face no consequences. But what they don't see is that betrayal always comes with a cost. Losing someone who truly loved you is a wound that time cannot heal. No matter where they go, no matter who they find next, there will always be something missing. Because the kind of love you gave them cannot be replaced. They may run to someone else, but that person will never love them the way you did. They may try to forget you, but no matter how much time passes, the memory of what they lost will remain. And as they sit in the emptiness they created, they will realize that they weren't the ones who won, you were. Because you didn't lose someone worthy of you, they lost someone they will never find again. The fool is not the one who loved. The fool is the one who played with that love and believed they could do better, only to find out that better never existed. The way they treated you was not a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of their inability to love correctly. They could have been blessed. They could have been healed. They could have had something real. But instead they played games. Instead they chose temporary pleasure over lasting loyalty. Instead they thought they could hurt you and still have access to your heart. But love is not a game. Love is not something you use and discard. Love is a gift, and when you mishandle it, you lose it. They didn't betray you because you weren't enough. They betrayed you because they weren't enough for you. They lacked the maturity to appreciate you. They lacked the integrity to love you the right way. They lacked the depth to see that what they had with you was once in a lifetime. And now they are left to live with that mistake. They are left to wonder, to regret, to wish they could go back. But love doesn't wait forever. And what they once took for granted is now something they can never have again. You gave them every opportunity to do right. You showed them patience, understanding, grace. You were not blind. You saw their flaws, their weaknesses, their struggles, but you chose to love them anyway. You chose to stand beside them, to believe in their potential, to fight for what you thought was worth saving. That is not foolishness. That is strength. That is what real love looks like. But the problem was never that you loved too much. The problem was that they loved too little. They couldn't match your heart. They couldn't return the depth you gave. And rather than rising to meet your love, they betrayed it. That was never your failure. That was never a mistake on your part. That was them showing you who they really were. And when someone shows you that they cannot love you correctly, the best thing you can do is let them go. Because love is not meant to be one-sided. It is not meant to be a constant battle of proving your worth to someone who should already see it. They lost you the moment they failed to honor the love you gave. Life has a way of teaching lessons to those who refuse to learn the easy way. They thought they could betray you and walk away unharmed. They thought they could hurt you and never look back. But what they failed to understand is that losing someone who truly loved you is not something you recover from easily. They may not have felt the loss immediately. They may have been distracted, caught up in their own ego, believing that they had won. But in the quiet moments when the distractions fade and reality settles in, they will feel it. They will miss the presence they took for granted. They will long for the love they once dismissed. They will wish they had treated you differently. And by then it will be far too late. The fool is not the one who loved fully. The fool is the one who walked away from a love they will never experience again. You didn't lose. You didn't fail. They did, and their biggest punishment will be living with the knowledge that they had something rare and let it slip through their hands. Some people only learn the value of something once it is gone. Some people only recognize love when they can no longer feel it. That is the tragedy of those who betray love. They don't realize the damage they've done until they are left alone with the weight of their own choices. But you are not responsible for their lessons. You are not responsible for fixing what they broke. You were never meant to keep proving your worth to someone who couldn't see it. They had their chance, they had their opportunity, and they threw it away. That is not your burden to carry. That is not your pain to hold on to. Because the one who truly lost was not you, it was them. The one who will regret it is not you, it is them. The one who will spend their life searching for what they once had, only to realize they will never find it again, is not you, it is them. That is the price of betrayal. That is the price of taking love for granted. No matter how much time passes, they will feel it every single day. You didn't lose them. You didn't fail. You didn't make the mistake by loving them. They made the mistake by betraying you. They were the ones who threw away something real. They were the ones who played themselves in the end, because love like yours is rare. Love like yours is irreplaceable. And while you move forward, healing, growing, stepping into something greater, they will remain stuck in the consequences of their own choices. Not because you wished it upon them, but because that is the natural law of life. You reap what you sow. You get back what you put out. And they put out betrayal. They put out deceit. They put out dishonor. Now all of that will return to them in ways they never expected. You were never the fool for loving them. They were the fool for betraying you. And now they must live with that reality for the rest of their lives. Obedience is not always easy. Sometimes it means walking away from people you love. Sometimes it means standing alone when you'd rather have company. Sometimes it means trusting when everything in you wants to hold on. But obedience brings blessings. When you followed the path God laid before you, you didn't do it because it was easy. You did it because you knew in your heart it was right. You did it because you understood that not everyone is meant to go where you are going. You obeyed when he told you to let go, even when your heart wanted to stay. You obeyed when he showed you their true colors, even when you wanted to believe otherwise. And because you obeyed, your blessing is coming. The pain you felt, the nights you cried, the days you was itching, it was never in vain. God saw it all. He saw your faithfulness even when it hurt. He saw your trust even when it didn't make sense. And he is about to reward you in ways you never expected. What you lost will be replaced with something greater. What you sacrificed will be returned to you in abundance. Your obedience has set you up for something beyond your imagination. But just as obedience brings blessings, disobedience brings consequences. While you were following God's path, they were ignoring his warnings. While you were listening to his voice, they were listening to their pride. While you were choosing growth, they were choosing destruction. And now they must face the results of their choices. God gave them a chance to change. He sent you as a sign, as an opportunity, as a last warning before their downfall. But they didn't listen. They mistook his patience for permission. They thought they could keep getting away with their actions, keep treating people however they wanted, keep living without accountability. But God is not mocked. There comes a time when the lessons they ignored become the reality they must face. There comes a time when the very things they ran from become the very things that chase them down. And while you step into your blessings, they will step into their lessons, not because you wished it upon them, not because you wanted revenge, but because that is the natural order of life. What you sow, you reap. And while you sowed in faith, they sowed in arrogance. Now the harvest has arrived. God never punishes without warning. He always gives opportunities to turn around, to make things right, to correct the path before destruction comes. That's why he sent you. You were not just another person in their life. You were their last chance. You were the final bridge to redemption. But instead of walking across it, they set it on fire. Instead of seeing you as a blessing, they treated you as disposable. They laughed at the truth. They dismissed the signs. They ignored the voice that told them to change. And now the very thing they ran from is the very thing they will have to face. Because ignoring the truth does not make it go away. Running from accountability does not erase responsibility. They thought they could outsmart God. They thought they could manipulate their way out of consequences. But what they failed to realize is that no one escapes the lessons they refuse to learn. They only delay them. And the longer they ignore them, the harder they hit when they finally arrive. What could have been a lesson learned with grace will now be a lesson learned through pain. Not because God wanted it this way, but because they chose it. Meanwhile, your life is shifting. Your season is changing. You obeyed when it didn't make sense. You trusted when you didn't have all the answers. You let go when your heart wanted to hold on. And because of that, you are about to walk into something you never imagined. The pain you endured was not wasted. The struggle you faced was not in vain. Every tear, every prayer, every sleepless night, it was all leading to this moment. A moment of breakthrough. A moment of restoration. A moment where you finally see why you had to go through what you went through. The blessing was never in them. The blessing was never in their approval. The blessing was never in their validation. The blessing was always in your obedience. And now you are stepping into everything that was meant for you. You are stepping into doors they were never supposed to walk through with you. You are stepping into favor that their presence would have blocked. And the same people who thought they could break you will be forced to watch as God builds you into something they can no longer reach. They thought you would fall without them. They thought you would be lost. They thought their absence would destroy you. But what they didn't realize was that you were never standing on their foundation, you were standing on God's. Your strength was never in them. Your future was never tied to them. And the moment you obeyed and walked away, you set yourself free from everything that was holding you back. They were a weight you were never meant to carry. They were a distraction you were never meant to hold on to. And now that you are free, your real blessings can flow. The doors that wouldn't open before will open now. The opportunities that seemed blocked will appear out of nowhere. The love you thought you lost will be replaced with something far greater. Because when you remove the wrong people, you make space for the right ones. And while they sit in the consequences of their own choices, you will rise into everything God has prepared for you. Not because you sought revenge, not because you forced it, but because you simply obeyed, and obedience is always rewarded. There is no shortcut to escaping the lessons of life. They thought they could avoid consequences. They thought they could outplay fate. They thought they could keep running from the truth, but the truth always catches up. And now, while you move forward, they will be stuck. Stuck in the same cycles they refuse to break. Stuck in the same habits they refuse to change. Stuck in the same pain they tried to project onto you. You see, God doesn't just remove people to punish them. He removes them so they can finally see themselves. And now, without you there to absorb their mistakes, they will have no choice but to face them. Without you there to give endless chances, they will have no choice but to take responsibility. Without you there to carry them, they will have no choice but to stand on their own. And for the first time, they will realize that losing you was not just losing a person, it was losing the favor, the protection, and the grace that came with you. And that will be the hardest lesson they will ever learn. Meanwhile, you will continue to rise. You will continue to heal. You will continue to walk in everything that was always meant for you. You will see the power of your obedience in ways that will leave you speechless. The very things you prayed for, the very things you thought you lost, the very things you thought were impossible, God is about to deliver them to you in ways you never expected. And as you step into this new season, you will look back and realize that everything had to happen exactly the way it did. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every disappointment, it was all necessary. Because without it, you would have never seen the truth. Without it, you would have never found your strength. Without it, you would have never walked into the purpose that was always waiting for you. And now, as they sit in the lessons they refuse to learn, you will stand in the blessings that were always meant for you. Not because you forced it, not because you begged for it, but simply because you obeyed. And obedience always leads to victory. Let them go. Let them deal with what they refuse to change. Because what's ahead for you is nothing